Hello, my name is Jeff Rolka. I want to thank you for checking out my live event. Whoa! um, hello. Oh, wow, there's already a bunch of questions here. I'm at the right time, I think. I think I come on at the right time here. Thank you for all these questions. Hello, Divis. Um, I that's awesome. What a way to start a live event with a bunch of questions already in the queue. Um, Hello from England. I happen to be in England this week. I'll be here for the next couple of weeks. And couple things. I haven't tried this internet connection with a live event. I used to stream here. I streamed here for a long time in England, but I was on a different internet connection. So if something happens or it goes haywire, just drop your question in the comment section of this video, this live event, and I will get back to you at the right time. Thank you, JC's Radiant Ray, and hello to you, JC's Radiant Ray. I am glad that I got the time correct. That is not to be taken for granted. But this is your live event, so please get your questions going. There's a lot of questions already. There was a question that I promised to address here at the very beginning, so I'm going to do that right now. Thank you if you've chosen to subscribe. JeffRogel.com is where you can learn about the AAA method and get at that, which is a linear way of working out your voice that I've developed, and also ways to support the channel with either contributions, or if you're using Amazon in whatever country you happen to be in, if you click through the links there from my website, then a small portion of your shopping experience will be donated to my channel. Doesn't change anything. It's all very much the same. Now, the question was really, really an interesting one, and it was talking about engagement, and the person was saying that they felt like they were using too much muscle tension in trying to support their air column. And the thing is that when we're changing over, like if you've been belly breathing, like sticking your stomach out and then sucking it back in order to try to support your voice, something is going. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Something is going on out there, and I'm really glad I'm not involved. If you've been sticking your stomach out and then sucking it back in order to try to breathe, the Apogeo breath management system uses the body in a very different way, and I would encourage you to do some reading and check it out. Don't take my word for it. Do your research. But when you maintain that expansion, there can be a period where you're using too much muscular energy in order to maintain that posture, and it's not as dynamic as it ultimately can be. Yeah. Woo baby, you got it, Jeremy, right? And so the thing is that there can be a period where you're too engaged and too tension, there's too much tension. And over time, you'll learn to only use the musculature that you really, really need to have engaged to maintain your posture and maintain your expansion. And following the 80-20 rule of air and having air in your person will help with this a lot too. So 80% of capacity, meaning don't try to inhale so much that you're about to burst. And don't let yourself go below 20% left in the tank. Because when you get below 20%, the rib cage really ends up almost having to collapse in order to keep the subglottic air pressure happening. So it's entirely normal to have a little bit too much muscle tension, muscle engagement for a while there. As you get used to that lateral expansion and the upward engagement of the rectus abdominis muscles, and keeping in mind 80% full, 20% empty, and move around a little bit so you can kind of stay flexible. Yes, this is in fact a cup of tea. I know it is horribly stereotypical, but I'm having a cup of tea and I am in England. Okay. Now that I've answered that question, hello, Divis. You've been waiting. Mr. Rolka, I have a question that has to do with breathing. According to some vocal teacher, we should inspire and expire air through the mouth and nose while singing, but it should be silent and should occur with nasal phonemes such as M and N. Is this true? Well, okay, so that kind of, if I'm not mistaken here, this is contradicting itself. If it's silent, then partially phonating consonants like M and N shouldn't phonate. The thing about this is that if we try to focus on a silent breath, we usually miss the point, which is kind of, well, this is actually very much in line with what I was just talking about regarding maintaining that lateral expansion. If you maintain your lateral expansion, then the breath comes quite naturally, both very quickly and quite silently. If it continues to come with a raspiness, like a sort of a thing to it, then you're engaging a lot of musculature here. And I would highly recommend some of those short note, short breath exercises that I use. I think there's one I know that there's one in the diaphragmatic warm-up. And that exercise, to be successful at it, you have to maintain really good consistency of your muscular engagement when you're inhaling, as well as when you're exhaling, when you're singing. And what that will help you do is to take some of the weight off the vocal fold. The vocal fold will start to release its engagement when it has adequate subglottic air pressure, when you're maintaining your support adequately, both during the inhalation and during exhalation. JC's Radiant Ray at Live Event. Martin, hey, I got here in time. Okay, I had a question last week, but I missed the stream. I was wondering if you knew of any exercises or advice for singing in my subharmonic register. That's a really interesting question. That's a really, really interesting question. I assume you mean, well, I hate to assume things about this sort of stuff. If you're talking about this, what we might call the strobase register, which is getting well below it's well below the point where you're entirely on the thyroarytenoid muscle, so you're completely okay. So to understand that, normally when we talk about cricothyroid dominant singing, we focus so much on the cricothyroid part of it, or the thyroarytenoid dominant, that we miss the dominant aspect of it. When you are below your secundo passaggio, so let's say a male tenor's secundo passaggio is around F4, F sharp 4. I mean, it varies. There's varieties of tenors, but generally speaking, your bog standard tenor, F4, F sharp 4. That's where my secundo passaggio is. We think that when you're in your thyroarytenoid dominant range, we miss the dominant part. The cricothyroid muscles are still active, and the cricothyroid muscles are what elongate the vocal fold and help facilitate your head voice. So when you're thyroarytenoid dominant, the cricothyroid muscles, those head voice muscles, are still active to about G3. Now that's just not below the secundo passaggio. It's almost an octave below the secundo passaggio. That's actually below the primo passaggio as well. It's only below G3 that we start to get truly only the thyroarytenoid musculature working. And as we get down to the bottom of that, we get to the strobase area of the voice. Getting into that, now if that's what you mean by subharmonic range, then, you know, and it depends a little bit on your Fock. For a tenor, being light, and getting way down to the bottom, a little bit of abduction or separation of the vocal fold will help with that. If you're a baritone, your voice can work really differently. If you're another Fock, for that matter, I'm going, Martin, I'm assuming is a male. I'm assuming you're a male vocalist. And I know you've asked questions in the past, but I don't remember your Fock right now. But a slight amount of abduction in the vocal fold will facilitate a little bit more airflow and can help with being in that register effectively. But if you're talking about like the Tuvan throat singing, where they get those like kind of way low crazy note things, that's a different matter that I can't say that I know. I don't really know much of anything about it. I've had a few conversations with a Tuvan throat singer before, but I would need to do a lot more study in that to really feel like I could advise you in that regard. Caboni, question, how much vocal compression I use? Light to max, but they say classical singers middle is best. Well, I would argue that the middle is the neutral phonation, is where we start with all of this, and that is, you know, that middle ground. But I don't necessarily think about it in those terms, and I don't really use the framework of vocal compression um, the way that I think you're using it here, Capone. I think about it as a dynamic relationship between vocal fold engagement or muscular tension at the larynx and subglottic air pressure, or for lack of a better way of putting it, airflow support. And what we want is to have those so that they are balanced, so that the vocal fold is getting the subglottic air pressure it needs, and the subglottic air pressure is appropriate to the amount of engagement at the vocal fold. You've seen a lot of short note, short vowel exercises on my channel. Those exercises are meant to help you develop that relationship. And that relationship changes as we move about through the different registers of our voice. So as we ascend, we'll get more subglottic pressure, and vocal fold engagement can reduce a little bit. As we descend, the opposite is true. Now, it doesn't, the subglottic air pressure increases quite a lot as you get above the secondo passaggio. But from the middle, like upper mid register and then down, there's much less of a difference overall in the amount of engagement for subglottic air pressure that's required. So in English, more or less, the difference in airflow as you descend is not as great as when we ascend. When we ascend, the necessity for airflow in order to keep the vocal fold released is very, very important. And that is usually a big hurdle in having consistent singing over the secondo passaggio. So to circle back around to your question, yeah, I would, and I don't think about it as in terms of a middle amount of vocal compression. I think about it as being well balanced. So when these things are appropriate, engagement and engagement at the vocal fold and engagement abdominally are working together, then you have a balanced approach to your singing. And from there, you can then choose to go in other directions if you should wish to. And, Mr. Rolka, I sing higher notes from C5 to 6 is very clean. My teacher says I sound nasally. However, when I try to open my mouth more and lift my soft palate when singing high, it's very sharp and a little scratchy sound. Yeah, there's a couple things immediately come to mind here. The inner smile technique, where you make a really massive kind of toothy grin. And when you do that, you may feel musculature around the rear top of your oral cavity engage. And what that subtle feeling, that muscle engagement is the lifting of your soft palate. This is also the part on our program where I get to snort like a pig. If you can do that, you can also get in touch with the muscles that will lift your soft palate. The action of lifting the soft palate typically has the impact of also lifting the nasal pharynx. That should help round out your sound. Third method to do this is you will find on my channel an exercise that begins with an NG sound. And typically, I'm asking people to find point or a forward amount of focus because it's involved in either singing in the mask or developing the singer's formant. And it can sound very bright and brilliant sounding. Some might call it nasal, but that's not exactly right. You can do that and focus on a rearward focus of your voice. So here's forward, or rearward focusing, and that can bring you in touch with how the nasal pharynx may or may not be lifting and how the soft palate may or may not be lifting too. In order to make that NG sound at all, you have to lift the soft palate up in order to close off the nasal passages. This doesn't take into account what may or may not be happening with how you are adducting your vocal fold. In other words, how it's coming closed. And I'm sort of coming from the assumption that that's working well for you. If that's not the case, then you may need to focus on vowel alignment too, or just balancing out your overall phonation in order to get a more rounded tone. But in truth, it does begin with vowel alignment, and that's where we get a fuller sound from. Balance. We work towards balance, then we get fuller by default. JC's Radio Ray is saying hello to me and to vocalists around the world, and hello to you. Kiponi, I basically addressed that. Beer. Hello. Hello. I hope it's okay if I call you Beer. Beer. Master? Beer Master. Oh, I can't believe I didn't see that from the start. I really appreciate your user ID. That's cool. Excellent. I got the right time. Steven. Hello. I would love to know what is the best way to open your range. The best way to open your range is to focus on, whoa. Where am I? Okay. You want to open your range, focus on vowel alignment and subglottic air pressure, more commonly called airflow or support. You focus on those things, get that all aligned in your thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, then start to bridge out. You try to open up your range before you have that, then you will struggle. You may struggle mightily. It will all go much more quickly if you have really, really consistent airflow and really, really good vocal alignment in the thyroarytenoid or chest voice range of your voice. That kid Matt, when you don't warm up for a while, do you lose range? Kind of that's a very interesting question. I don't know that anyone's ever asked that before. That's really cool. Probably in the extremities. However, the extremities of our range are going to be different for everyone, and I'm not speaking for individuals in terms of. I'm speaking relative to FOC. So, you know, I can vocalize, you know, pretty consistently from C3 to C5. Now, I can vocalize up to an F5, but I really don't make a habit of doing that because it's just not necessary for what I sing. And while I can appreciate working my voice out and learning about my voice for the sake of learning about it, and I do that, most of the stuff that I want to sing, most of it doesn't really go beyond B flat 4 as an outlier. So, you know, do I regularly access D5s and E flat 5s? A little bit. That range doesn't really contract for me any longer. But singing effectively to an F5, I might have to practice that for a week or so before I start to feel really, really comfortable doing that again, particularly if I have a phrase that starts there. So yeah, I mean, and again, like, but that takes into account that I've been doing this and vocalizing and singing for quite a long time. And if I may say so, I have a pretty high degree of understanding of the vocal mechanism, how it works and how it integrates with my body, and I know my tendencies as well. I know my past habits, where to guard against them so that I don't get into bad habits if I haven't warmed up effectively. And all of those things help me to be more consistent and also really help me to not have to warm up as much as one who perhaps hasn't had that level of experience. So if you just learn how to sing over the secondo passaggio and then you stop warming up and stop doing your vocalizations for a week or two, you're probably gonna relapse a little bit. You're gonna backpedal somewhat on that ability. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because in relearning it, you will become stronger in your understanding of the mechanism and you will get better and better at it. And each time this happens, you get better and better at it, I believe, until it ceases to be an issue any longer. Hello, Dylan Klein Music. Mrs. Webster, yes, I'm in England for a couple weeks here, visiting family, and then I'll return back to California. Beer Master, I am from Thailand. I'm going to really enjoy saying that user ID. I'm truly. Oh, I guess Mrs. Webster. A little history. Um, those beams back there behind me are English oak, and so long as you don't paint them, they will last almost indefinitely because they're so high in tannins that virtually all insects are repelled by them. Now, this particular room that I'm in kind of looks old, and it is by most standards, but the real old part of the house is down on the ground level, and it's a small little kitchen. It's a small little room with a furnace in it, and that dates back to the 1500s, actually. Not my house. I am from Thailand. I learn and warm up my voice with your videos. Thanks very much. You're very welcome. Thank you for watching. Stephen, I'm a comfortable baritone, want to become a comfortable tenor. Is it possible? Yes and no. You can certainly masquerade as a tenor. That will involve becoming very confident and comfortable with your range over the secondo passaggio, but you're not going to change where that secondo passaggio is. That's a reflection of how your voice is put together. So you can emulate the volume profiles that a tenor would emulate. You can emulate the kind of singer's formant that a tenor might have, and you can mask your transition so much so that no one can tell where your transition from thyroarytenoid to cricothyroid dominance is. But you can't physically move that so that your secondo passaggio is where a tenor might be, if you are in fact a baritone. Mrs. Webster at JC's Radiant Ray. Hi Jeff, hi everyone. Welcome Mandy, hello. JC's Radiant Ray, Mrs. Webster. Woo, Jeff baby. Yes. That was from Ter. Thanks. Sorry, but in Kazakhstan, dollar is very expensive. Yes, I believe so. Thankfully, all the stuff on YouTube is totally free, and the AAA method on my website's free too. If that was in relationship to that, that's free. I just was meaning support the channel because YouTube's gotten rid of fan funding, and things cost money. So, but I totally understand. I'm in Kazakhstan. I think that's awesome that you're watching the videos, and I hope you learn a lot. And that's what this channel is all about, is making what I believe to be good exercises and good vocal practices available. Thank you for watching. At Mandy Cummins, Mandy Cummins at JC's Radiant Ray. Laugh out loud. We can tell your children have good breath support. Yeah. Teenagers just add eye rolls. Goodness me. Do you accept one-off in-person students? For example, should one find oneself in London? Sure, of course. Yeah, I'm happy to meet with people and have a lesson. There's plenty of places. There's really one place in London that I like to go and teach, which is at 29 Marylebone Lane, just the music studios in London. Amazing Canadian gentleman Nigel runs it. That's giving a shout out to the music studios in Marylebone. They're really great. It is the place to have a lesson or go to practice. And Nigel and Jake are just awesome guys, and I love being there and supporting them. Not necessarily the most inexpensive rooms that you can find, but extremely well taken care of. Really good facility, comfortable. It feels like being in a music school, which to me feels really nice. It just reminds me of being in university. Hello, Maestro, from Ronaldo. Hello, people. What are your thoughts, Maestro, on singers and vocal teachers using vibrators to relax? So, it's a massager of vibrators to relax their muscles. Please try to give a serious answer. Thank you. I will. Honestly, I've never heard of this. But now that you mention it, I could totally understand why someone might use a vibrating thing, a vibrator or whatever, on their neck or things like that. I see a lot of vocalists that get really stiff necks, so I'll ask them to sing a scale and say sing E, and I'll say, okay, can you waggle your head while you do it? E. And what will happen is they'll sing E, And you noticed, of course, that I started off wagging my head and immediately I locked up my neck. Locking up those neck muscles might not hurt you, but they certainly won't help you. And the more flexibility we can build into the system, the better off we will be. The more we can use only the muscles that we truly need to use for singing and allow the other ones to be passive. I am reminded, no, that's a different thing altogether. The other side of this too is that oftentimes when we move around like that, when we can be flexible and when we can move, we can become aware of how our body is working to support our voices. That then informs, the muscles that we're using and not using, and what might be a necessity and others that are unnecessary. So, scridging up the muscles in the back of your neck isn't necessary and isn't helpful. And becoming aware of that, we can then circumvent it and do something different. So oftentimes, like putting that on there might make you aware of those muscles and make you aware of the tension in those muscles and allow you the awareness to then wiggle your head more effectively, and then from there release the tension entirely. And what I've been told in the past is that the engagement of the musculature in the neck specifically can impede, and I'm not sure how this works. This was presented to me in a lesson quite some time ago, and I haven't vetted it entirely. So while I hate to propagate rumors, I think it's an interesting thought, which is that tension in the neck can impede the neural activity along the spinal column. Seems kind of unlikely, but that would then have a rather dramatic impact on how we are using our voices and how messages are getting to our air management systems, our lateral expansion, things like that. Certainly that neck tension is not going to help you manage your lateral expansion. So yeah. Mandy comments, I have a question. I've got quite comfortable in the head voice in my transition into it. Sweet. So I've been thinking I'd like to develop a richer tone in my voice, upper register in particular. How should I go about it? The short answer to this is balance. Balance, balance, balance. Of course, Mandy, I know that you record yourself fairly regularly. That can be another important way to monitor your progress in this matter, because the thing about it is that the internal experience of our upper registers, the internal experience is more different than the internal versus external experience. So how I sound in my head when I am above my secondo passaggio is more different than it is when I'm below the secondo passaggio. In other words, when I sing above my secondo passaggio, what I hear and what you hear sound a lot more different than below. I hope I've explained that correctly. The reason why I bring this up is because oftentimes we can, if we've squeezed out our high notes in the past, the sensation of being above the secondo passaggio and having done so effectively and smoothly with good transition into our cricothyroid dominant singing voice or head voice, it can feel too light, or it can feel too hollow or open, or as if we're not really getting that right feeling for our voice. But notice what I'm saying here is the feeling. And those feelings are largely subjective, and often the feelings mislead us, because if we've belted or squeezed them out in the past, that feeling of tension can be associated with singing the high note. And when we remove that feeling of tension, we feel as if we're not getting a resonant, balanced tone above the secondo passaggio. And this is where recording comes in. Not every day, not even every week, maybe every 2 weeks or once a month or something like that. And that way we can monitor the sound and evaluate it against our thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice, chest voice, and the overall experience of our singing. Ronaldo, that's the serious one. I bought a phone and downloaded Kindle. Any book recommendations or poetry book I have to elevate my lyrics for the second mixtape? By the end of the year, I will have the first one ready for proper recording and mixing masters. Wonderful, Ronaldo. Good job. That's a very interesting question. And I think that there are probably dozens of different answers for that. I am actually very fond of just opening any old book I find and taking inspiration from whatever I see. So on my album The Atlantean, which you can listen to on iTunes, or I think it's on Spotify too, actually. On The Atlantean, there's a song called Obsidian, and that was taken from a paragraph in The Road, the book by Cormac McCarthy, I think was the author's name. It was actually a challenge. A friend of mine and I were doing a writing. It wasn't a challenge. We were doing a writing kind of thing together. We'd each write songs based on stuff we just like phrases we'd pull out of magazines, books, whatever. So, because I think the thing is that reading, Yeats or Byron or something like that, or Shakespeare, reading those things, they might elevate your use of language. They might elevate your cognition around expression. But lyrics, but the lyrics have to come from within you, and if it is any way inauthentic, if it has a sort of twist to it that doesn't sound like it's from the author writing it, from the lyricist or the composer in your case writing it, then it loses something. And I think one of the greatest things that we do for ourselves to write better and better lyrics is to write lyrics again and again and again. I ended my Song a Day challenge a couple weeks ago. I ended with 323 songs, I think it was. I wrote this year. So I wrote, from January 1st of 2017, I wrote a song every single day. Sometimes I wrote two. I had like spells where there was some amazing, really writing that I was doing, and other times where it was really difficult, and I wasn't terribly inspired by what was coming out of my pen. But I always created it into a song, and that practice, I think, elevated my entire game. So while I think that taking in whatever inspires you is vastly important, I think that a daily, if possible, or at least regular practice of output is going to be what truly elevates your game when it comes to lyrics and song development. Karina, hello! JC Renner, Karina, Martin Perez, Retracted, Lindsay Baines. Hey Jeff, it's good to see you over there. Just saying thanks again for all your wonderful warm-ups. Use them often. Have a good week, and thank you so much. I appreciate that. Kakperwick. I hope I'm doing that okay. Do you think M2 sound viable to contemporary styles? Now, if I'm not mistaken, M2 is talking about modes of phonation, and that is relevant to the CVT, complete vocal method, or CVM, CT, something like that, complete vocal method, or something like that. I think, if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is the vocal method that uses those to describe them. If I'm not mistaken, M2 is equivalent to the secondo passaggio. If that is correct, then I'm not exactly sure what that means by the M2 sound, because what we're referring to is a transition point. Now, if you're asking me about whether or not it's advisable to make a smooth transition over the secondo passaggio, or in this case over M2, so that you'd be using your cricothyroid dominant singing voice above that point of transition, then I would say yes, that is relevant to contemporary styles. I would also say, however, that it's important to have in your arsenal of expression New phrase, I'm going to hang on to that one, arsenal of expression. Um, a lot of different ways to uh, color notes, so perhaps a little bit, belting from time to time may be appropriate. You may even enter the call of the voice and full-on shout, depending on your genre. Other times, having a cricothyroid dominant singing voice that is overly balanced towards the cricothyroid dominance can be quite lovely and appropriate as well. That can also facilitate bringing the cricothyroid dominant voice lower than the secondo passaggio by a reasonable degree, similar to like a bon iver, which can be really nice from time to time. So Karina Chen saying thanks for JC's rain. Dylan Klein Music, how do you know? Pardon me. How do you know if you're incorporating enough of the singer's formant? And can you use an EQ analyzer in a DAW to check the amount in your voice? And finally, is it very important for pop singing? Okay, from the back to the front, important for pop singing? Absolutely. It is critical for pop singing, just as much as it's critical for opera. And you may find that you want to emphasize more of it going back to the very beginning. In particular, if you're singing with a band, even I have to say, like, I like to incorporate a little bit more of that, pretty much in general. I like it. I like the brilliance that it lends the sound, and I find that it's really, really helpful with understanding the singer, me in this case, when I'm using a microphone too. Now that can vary from mic to mic. If you're using an SM58, I would say probably the more the merrier. And can you use an EQ analyzer in a DAW? Yeah, you certainly can, but you would use a spectrum analyzer. So a spectrum analyzer is the plugin that you would use to check that. However, you'll need to use a multi-band spectrum analyzer. So, like a standard, like it will have to be able to show you a variety of different frequency areas in order to really look at what's happening in that. Good question. Martin Perez, how can I work on singing louder when I'm at the extent of my range, like head voice or the lower notes I sing? I'm a bass. Alignment and subglottic air pressure is the way to maximize volume, resonance, and balance. If you focus purely on creating volume, you'll probably induce vocal fold engagement, which is going to ultimately be self-defeating. So, volume in the singing voice is a nonlinear occurrence, which means that we require the sympathetic vibrations of the soft tissues in the oral cavity in order to maximize volume. In order to maximize that volume, we need to be able to have the vocal fold vibrate with as much, I guess, amplitude would be the word, as we can. I think about these things in terms of creating consistent sound. So, I'm thinking about this all in the realm of my voice is going to sound just the same as it always sounds. It's just going to be as loud as I can possibly make it at any given range. So we want to increase airflow such that the vocal fold can vibrate with as much amplitude as it can in order to stimulate as much sympathetic resonance in the soft tissues and areas of the head, and that's what's going to get your volume for you. We have differences in volume from low to high. So the higher we go, the more airflow that occurs, the more release of the vocal fold mechanism we have, we naturally will become quite a bit louder. There is a limit to how loud you can sing and still be in your lower register before you start to strain and ultimately get the tissues to engage. And from there, it's a downhill spiral because you're just going to lose volume the minute those tissues start to get engaged. Yan, hello. Hello. Do you have pitch exercises focusing on the onset? I mean, I have a hard time to aim the note directly. There's always an on-ramp, a little glissando up to it. There are many, many, many of them. What you want to do is check out. You may not be new to vocal training, and you may not be a new vocalist, but you want the short exercises, and most of them are in the beginner's playlist. But honestly, if you've got a glissando coming up to those pitches anyway, then sticking to a really, really comfortable range and doing the short notes and shorter exercises, it's only going to make your work go more quickly. So, if you kept on doing the melismatic stuff, which is predominantly in the warm-up playlist, then I'm sure you'll get there eventually, but I think it will go much more quickly if you just go over there, do those for like a couple weeks, and that will help you get more balance between airflow and vocal fold engagement, and that glissando will go away for you. And you can move back to the warm-up playlist and check yourself and say like, oh, okay, well, now that's not happening any longer, and you're off. Mrs. Webster, you're welcome. The English Oak lesson, incidentally, that figures prominently in a Doctor Who episode. It keeps the werewolves out. I did not know that. I will rest that much more easily tonight. What it does not keep out, I can assure you, are the gliss. If you don't know what a gliss is, they were imported by the Romans, whenever that was, like, I don't know, quite a while ago, for food. They're edible dormice, and they're the cutest things you've ever seen, but they are louder than anything, and they get in these walls. They are screechy and crazy. Because these walls, they're not, they're like, it's not drywall with a gap in between like in the U.S. It's this stuff. I don't actually know what it is, but it's much more solid than that, although they're still quite cold. When you speak of subglottic pressure, is this synonymous with loudness? David Walsh, how loud should one be when doing warm-ups? Oh, afternoon, hope all is well. Thank you. Yes, it is good over here. No, subglottic pressure is air pressure below the epiglottis. Thank you for asking that question. I'm trying to use subglottic pressure more than airflow because it's easy to use the word airflow, but it's not entirely an accurate description of what occurs between the vocal fold and our support mechanisms, our musculature in the torso of our body. And as I continue my studies and all that kind of stuff, I always want our time together in my teaching to be as efficient and accurate as I possibly can make it. And so I've been feeling that I need to incorporate subglottic air pressure as a usable phrase and a concept in my teaching. So it's not synonymous with loudness, and I apologize if I have not explained that adequately up till now. And if that's not clear, please please ask me to clarify anything that's unclear. But the closest synonym would be airflow. However, the thing is that the error occurs when we're talking about ascending over the secondo passaggio, because the actual rate of flow of air over the vocal fold doesn't really increase that much, though, and I myself have said this, that we're going to increase airflow as we ascend. The problem is that that's not entirely accurate. It does increase, but the thing that really increases, the real significant increase, comes in subglottic air pressure. So I'm trying to make that distinction. Mandy, drive safe, Mandy. Christian, deleted by JC's Radiant. Thank you, JC's Radiant Ray. Mrs. Love that you're a Whovian. At Mandy Cummins. Thank you, JC's Radiant Ray. I appreciate that. That kid, Matt. When you stop warming up your vocals and singing, do you lose? I already answered that question. Ronaldo, in my opinion, this channel is a great investment by Maestro. Thank you. Just imagine if one person who practices from these videos gets famous, the amount of popularity we'll get. It's funny. There are some people in Latin America who I think are really quite famous that use the channel. They just haven't mentioned it or anything like that, but that's fine. It'd be fun. I think it'd be kind of neat. It'd be sort of weird. But we'll take it as it comes. I still plan on doing these live events. I've always wondered about doing more of these because I really enjoy them. And if it ever got to the point where I really, because I know I get behind, And as a sidestep, or as a means by which to not quite start doing more than one live event per week, I've started to ask people, and I'll do that now. If it looks like I'm not going to get to your question, post it in the comments for this video, and I'll answer it later. And thank you, by the way, for those of you. I'll do my station identification. Broadcasting live from Britain today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing if you have. And if I'm not going to get to your question, if it looks like I'm not, and I do have a hard stop time today, then please post it in the comments for this video, and I'll answer it as soon as I can. Heidi, hello, Heidi. Long day of teaching. Still got your voice. Good. At Yan, welcome. At Heidi, how do I develop my falsetto? That kid, Matt. The start is to develop a good transition over the secondo passaggio. You can check out the extended range videos, and there's another video of mine. There's a video of mine that's how to sing falsetto, which deals with falsetto as a range. Now, the falsetto range of one's voice isn't the airy, light, Aaron Neville kind of thing, right? It's a different thing than that. And so it depends kind of on what you're talking about. If you're talking about like a falsetto tone production, not technically in your falsetto range, that's kind of a different matter. But if you're talking about falsetto and those real high notes, then there's a video on it. Check it out and come back and tell me how it goes here. I probably am a little bit overdue on another one of those kind of videos. So if you do check it out, let me know what you think, and maybe I can incorporate if there's things that you'd like to see differently. The extended range videos also go into the falsetto range as well, but they're not technique videos. They don't teach how to do it. Thanks, Mrs. Webster. Mrs. Webster, ooh, look up the Marylebone Studios he mentioned. Yes, it is. Charles Dickens meets Old England Candy Shop. I would love to make music there. It really is nice. It really, really is nice. And it's funny. There is a tea shop that sells handmade teas and jams, Scotch eggs. If you don't know what a Scotch egg is, tell me, and I'll tell you about it. That's like down on the Marylebone Lane and around the corner from the music rehearsal studios, and it's so nice to go in there and have a cup of tea and sit around. And that shop has been there since, I forget what it was. I want to say like just the turn of the 1800s, so like 1700 and something to 1800, and I think only a couple families have owned it and have sort of passed it on through the years. But yeah, the music studios in London is awesome. James, hey Jeff, if I can do the extended range baritone warm-up, would this put me close to tenor or no? Well, it's not a closer to thing because the ranges just keep on going up. If you're doing the extended range baritone warm-up, then you are going above the secondo passaggio of the tenor range vocalists, but you're not going above the falsetto range of the tenor vocalist, or you might only just be. But the fact is that if you're doing that warm-up effectively, you are covering like probably 90% of pop tunes don't cover the range that's in that video. You've got plenty of range to work with there. Mandy Cummins, that sounding different thing is so true. I recorded a performance the other day. I swore the audience could hear my transition, but when I listened, even though I know my break, couldn't hear it. That's right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad you like Obsidian. I must admit, that's one of my, I try not to pick favorites among my songs, but I came at that tune differently in so many different ways. I explored a lot of really different recording techniques. Just did so many different things with that video, with that song to arrive at that. FYI, I played all the instruments on that, so everything on that song, everything you hear was. Oh wait, I didn't play the strings. Never mind. Tell a lie. Tell a lie. I did not. But somewhere in there is the 2 week drum loop. There's a drum loop. I'm not. I think it's on Obsidian. No, it's on Blackbird. There's a breakdown in Blackbird, and it's all of like 2 bars, and there's an obviously sampled drum loop in that breakdown, and you know, for one thing led to another, and I ended up spending 2 weeks processing that drum loop to get it to sound that way, and then I ended up editing it all out except for that one little 2-bar instance of it in Blackbird. Ronaldo, you're absolutely right. Thank you. Thank you. That's very touching, Ronaldo. Thank you. And thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us today. Great questions. Karina, yes, I can absolutely do another video on onset exercises. Thank you for adding. That's very kind of you to add, please. I sort of assumed it was there, but that's very kind. Absolutely. Absolutely. Happy to do it. Happy to do it. I love doing those videos. I feel like I'm really... I feel like I'm doing good teaching when I'm doing those onset video exercises and things like that, because they're so... I find them to be extremely efficient at helping our overall vocal balance. JC's Rainy Ray started to practice with a mezzo. Soprano, I'm starting to practice with a mezzo. She does not like anyone to harmonize with her because she will follow them. How should we practice together? I do not remember how I learned. Slowly. You might start with some stuff that's... Okay, so first of all, I would steer clear of anything that's new. Do things that she is so comfortable with, so solid on that, you could wake her up in the middle of the night, unannounced, and she could sing the song blindfolded with cotton in her ears. Like familiar. We're talking familiarity. We're talking like know it cold, like super comfortable, easy peasy lemon squeezy, like really, really comfortable. Because the problem here has nothing to do with harmonizing it. The problem is her staying on her part. You may have to play the part along with her, or if she plays piano, she may have to play her part. She might have to plug an ear in order to hear predominantly herself. There are any number of things that one might do in order to facilitate a person staying on their part. One of the things that I like to do is to have everybody sing the part together. So we all sing the part together, and then let them sing their part on their own. And then have them plug their ears and ignore you, or tell them to ignore you, or play it on the piano, and maybe step like 10 feet away and try to be a little bit softer. And just, it's going to be a process. It's going to be a process. But hopefully one of those things, or a combination of those things, will help. Panayotov. Thank you, Jeff. You big. You're welcome. Thank you. And I don't recognize your user ID. Welcome to the live event. Thank you for joining us. At Yan, at JC's Radiant Ray, Singing McSinger Pants. Can any baritone become a countertenor with development of the falsetto? How can this be done? Thanks. One might argue yes. Your question, Singing McSinger Pants, which I'm going to love saying that user ID too. I've gotten behind. I had no idea. I lost you. In a way, your question is so well written, I feel like you kind of have answered it yourself. But you know what it is missing, however, is an aspect of the cricothyroid dominant singing voice. Because in order to bring that lower, you're going to need a little abduction of the vocal fold in order to make it so that you're not straining too much. So development of the abducted falsetto tone production in the cricothyroid dominant singing voice range is appropriate to practice for that. And as well, practicing a largely cricothyroid dominant singing voice sound, and then allowing for abduction as you descend, beyond a major second, minor third below the secondo passaggio would probably help with developing that countertenor affectation. At Mandy, Karina, airflow and vocal fold engagement exercises are equivalent to chord closure exercises. Yes. Is it too late to start singing at 37? Absolutely not. Thank you, Karina. You are absolutely right. Thank you, Karina. I love the live events too. Thank you, Jeff. All the best. You're very welcome. Dylan Klein Music. Regarding the subglottic air pressure distinction versus volume, so as you ascend, you do not necessarily have to get any louder for the voice to transition to head voice properly. Very interesting question. Very, very interesting question. Yes. Yes. However, if you want the sound to remain consistent, then you will incur a crescendo. You will get louder in order to maintain consistent tone quality across the secondo passaggio. If you are okay with a sound that is balanced more towards the cricothyroid dominant singing voice, then you could maintain more consistent volume, but you're probably going to have that cricothyroid affectation more. Very, very interesting question. Really interesting. That kid, Matt TKM, thank you, man. You're welcome. Cheers. JC's Radiant Ray, at JC's Radiant Ray. Heidi Banker, I recommend your chat. Thank you. I so forget to mention that. Like, I forget to mention Sequencer, a global voice. If you want to keep things rolling, you can find us on Facebook. Sequencer, a global voice. I have been horrible about checking in lately. I'm going to do better in 2018. Thank you, Heidi. And to the person from Kazakhstan, if you're still watching, sharing the channel helps so much. That really, really helps too. Sharing the channel or the videos with other people is really, really helpful, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for doing that, Heidi. And that is awesome. I'm so glad that you are maintaining your voice while still teaching. That is not a trivial task. That is really not a trivial task. Mrs. Webster, Scotch eggs, you've got me drooling and wanting to visit England. Seriously, for those of you who don't know what a Scotch egg is, it is indulgence wrapped in indulgence. Take an egg, wrap it in sausage, bread it, and deep fry the whole thing. What else do you want? Now I know, many of you may not eat that kind of stuff. And in truth, I kind of burned out on Scotch eggs while we were living here, so I haven't touched one in a while. But we were just at we were at the market in Greenwich today. There's a kind of Christmassy market that's down there. And we also went and saw the Cutty Sark, which is really interesting. And there was a vendor there who had these glorious Scotch eggs. And, like, I saw her preparing a few. I had lunch at a pie and mash shop, so I didn't have a Scotch egg, but I could see that the yolks were still, like, kind of not, they were perfectly cooked, so they were, like, a little bit not runny but gelatinous, but not like fully nuclear cooked, so that it was just gorgeous, gorgeous. Yan, what is the time of that? The name of that tea place in England? Oh, goodness me. You know what? If you use Google Maps and you look for 29 Marylebone Lane or the Music Studios, and their URL is, I think, themusicstudios.co.uk, and then zoom in on Google Maps, it's like, you'll see that the Music Studios is in this cul-de-sac, and it's just around the corner there. I'm actually going down there on Monday. I'll get the name. I forget the name, but I'll get the name and I'll post it here, or I'll tell you about it. Everyone, I have to go, but I want to wish you all the absolute best. Thank you so much for your questions. If I have not gotten to your question, please post it in the comments so that I could address it just as soon as I possibly can. Thank you, Mrs. Webster, for Blackbird. thank you very much. I love teaching. Teaching is amazing. Teaching to me is an integral part of being an artist, and I love it. So thank you, and thank you for your kind words. Thank you all so very much. I'm gonna go now, but take really good care of your voices. Enjoy singing, and I will see you next week, I believe. Although that might change, so stay tuned. I may, in fact, have to, if Christmas observation stuff with family and things like that are happening on that Saturday, I may have to cancel next week. But I will keep you updated in all the relevant channels. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Bye. Stuff with family and things like that are happening on that Saturday. I may have to cancel next week, but I will keep you updated in all the relevant channels. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Bye.